Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Bomb Draft and Pray podcast. I am your host, Pedro Barbosa, and with me we have our friend, Earl Goddard. Hello.
Hello, mate. How are we?
We are fine. We are fine. So, I'll have to do a quick disclaimer. Contrary to what we said on last week's podcast, we had a race this week. So a little bit, I'm going to apologize for that because it was my mistake. Mine and my colleagues' mistakes because no one saw that the race was this week. But yeah, we didn't forget to watch it and we didn't forget to have our opinions on it. And let's get into the thick of it. I know there's a few some news that came out before the weekend about budgets and all that, but I don't really think that it's the time to talk about that because it's all very new and no one really knows what's going on.
Yeah, there's not enough info about what's happening, is there?
No, that is
apart from two teams have been naughty.
Yeah, two teams have been naughty.
Yeah,
and everyone before the weekend was talking about it and naming everyone, and then when a team manager basically said that he was going to sue everyone that said his team's name, everything stopped. So they stopped talking about the teams. So yeah, if that tells you something or not about the proceedings, I'm not sure, to be honest. But yeah, so
we don't want to get sued.
No, we don't want to get sued. Everyone's talking about it, but yeah, that's fine. This is the race review. This is not the budget cap review. That will be when the proceedings come out and we know exactly what happened. So yeah, so we went to Singapore. It's a little bit of a different weekend because although it's in the Asian part of the world, it's a night race and the F1 circus stays on European time. So the race starts at normal European time in the middle of the night, and everyone stays in that schedule so that they don't have to do the jet lag, all that stuff, and the sleep deprivation and all of that jazz. So, what do you think about? I've never been like massively jet lagged. I've never been to America or Asia or something like that. I've had a few hours of distance from where I live, but not that massive. But do you think it's that really important when next week is the Japanese Grand Prix?
I think it can be. Obviously affects everyone different. I know when I used to travel to America, going there, I never struggled with jet lag. It was fine. Just carry on as normal. Coming back, it was hard work. The next day, you really struggled. I struggled coming back. Why they do it, whether it's how much of it is just to stay on European time or how much of it is just a gimmicky sort of thing and to get the night race in, and I don't know. They've been doing it long enough now, so no one's really seems to mind. It suits us Europeans because we get to watch it at normal time and we don't have to get up in the middle of the night.
Yeah. So yeah, on that part, watching it, I actually watched it live. I was supposed to, but because I got a little bit delayed getting home, or getting in front of the TV, but as it turned out, it was fine for me, so I watched it live. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So yeah, we haven't gone to the circuit. 2019 was the last time that we went there. Then because of the whole COVID thing, it got all shut down, and we didn't go there for all of these years. But it's I like it. It's an interesting track. It's not the best place to overtake, but it's an interesting track. And yeah, this version
it always seems to have good races, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like Baku. On paper, it's a little bit
rubbish, but it seems to deliver. So, and it's a street race. We like the street race aspect to it. I think there's not enough of them.
I think that's a hot take. Clearly, you don't listen to other podcasts, or they complain about there being too much street races.
Yeah, but the thing about the street races, you get to see, especially with the modern era of cars, you get to see them not porpoising, but bouncing around corners due to the nature. Whereas, obviously, a normal circuit, it's a lot more sedate in terms of the car moving around. I think that's what we want to see at the end of the day. You want to see the driver actually working, don't you? See what they're doing.
Yeah, and it seems to bring this like muscling the car over to try and overtake, and we get some places where it's a bit tense, because if you go two cars too wide in some places, you're going to have a crash, or you cannot you cannot squeeze the other guy out in the exit of the corner. None of that stuff.
Yeah, walls are a good motivator to make sure it is a clean pass. But yeah, I personally like them. Obviously, we don't want to have every race being a street race, but I think also one that's faster than Monaco, because as much as Monaco is great, it's not fast, is it?
No, I think Monaco is the at least in Formula One, it's the last of the old street tracks, like the really narrow and slow ones. That these cars have outgrown a little bit, Monaco, but yeah, Monaco has just a bit. Monaco has its own thing that justifies, and in my opinion, it justifies it being on the calendar. But yeah, this is like the first of the modern street tracks, I think, because Baku was after that, and Abu Dhabi is not really a street track. It was supposed to be, but it's not really a street track. We have Saudi now. It's very modern, and it's not really a street track. It has walls, but it's not really a street track. Yeah. So yeah, we went there. It's like we were supposed to do this weekend a pre-show to the Singapore Grand Prix. Let's talk about the crazy corner that we had when it first came out. That triple
Singapore
chicane.
slingshot.
Yeah, that chicane. That thing that it was. What did you thought about that when it came out?
It's obviously mixed. You could get ultimate lap time out of it if you got it right, which kept them pushing for that extra tenth. But you went a tenth too much, and it ended in a shunt. It was very rare someone got it wrong and came out the other side. It was straight into the barriers, and I think it's a different dynamic. When it got a bit silly when they were launching, because they got it wrong into the first part of it, and I think it was the Sauber or Force India that went,
or Force India that went over
when flying. That's when it's getting a bit silly. But I think it's compared to a lot of tracks, and when they do the chicanes, it's having a decent sized curb and making the drivers actually have to go around it, I think is good, because there's too many circuits these days. Paul Ricard example, where you just run wide and it's not a problem, carry on. I think there's got to be a bit of a penalty, so you don't get a 1x, you get a damage.
Yeah. My experience of it was the Singapore Grand Prix was first 2008. That was when I was already sorry guys, but I'm going to talk about sim racing. I was already sim racing back then and doing with a couple of friends our own championship, and it was right when it came out, like in middle of that adventure, and we had the track for Formula One Challenge 99 to 02. For those of you that are old enough to remember it. And yeah, we had that chicane, and it was like I never approached that thing because it was left. It was a few curves, like low curves on the ground, basically bolted to the tarmac, and it was left, right, left. Like really quickly. It was really small, but I never approached it like I never turned right, for example. You approach it in a way that you took the curb on the right side in a way that the car wouldn't jump, and you just do it like a normal left-hander. So it was like just straighten a little bit the steering wheel in the apex. I'm putting quotes for those of you that are, because it wasn't really the supposed apex was in the middle of the two apexes. So I'm sorry if I'm not making that much sense, but yeah, the apex of that corner was like in the middle of between the two left-handers. So it was a little bit strange. It was interesting. And it has a place in my heart, so there's like a nostalgic factor, but it's not needed, let's be honest. It did nothing for the circuit.
No, they seem to have got it sorted now with how the track runs, and it runs well without major incidents, which that was causing. But
yeah,
it wasn't too bad for while it lasted.
Yeah, an interesting thing about a racetrack that I really like, and it was our first night race in Formula One. Now it's more a normal kind of practice, but back then it was like, whoa, they're going to race at night with cars that have no headlights. And yeah, but it was fine. You saw visibility was fine, the lighting was amazing. So now what's normal practice now, back then was a little bit meh, but then as soon as we went there, it was fine. So yeah, now let's go into the weekend. We came here, and it was that whole part of the world was like with a typhoon. I know that MotoGP had problems as well with rain the whole weekend. They even had some freighters that came in late, so they didn't have one of the practice sessions. This in MotoGP. Formula One didn't have that problem, maybe because they stopped for much more time before this race. But the whole weekend was on and off rain, so it was a little bit difficult to really see the running order. And it's a different kind of weekend because normally when the session starts and we get the sun into the track, the tarmac gets hotter as we go on during the session, and here is the other way because we never have sunlight, so it goes down, but the air temperature stays hot, so it's a little bit strange on that part because it's so humid there. But yeah, so we didn't really know. We sort like Mercedes was hopeful that they would have a good car. I think even someone said that it was their opportunity to get a win this year. Did you get that impression before the Grand Prix?
I don't think a win. They would definitely, where they have now kind of returned back to being there or thereabouts behind Ferrari and Red Bull. So we knew they were going to be the two teams up the front. And yeah, I think they were the next best from what I saw of practice. But it wasn't, Lewis was fastest in FP1. So what? It's these days that means nothing.
No, practice tells you nothing. So every
Exactly.
testing right now, free practice is almost like testing in the beginning of the year. They just do their programs with their own fuel and all that stuff. So we don't really know what's going on, but we hope for.
Yeah, it's safe to say wherever you go, Ferrari and Red Bull are the two dominant cars at the moment, and it's probably a couple of tenths here or there to one or the other each weekend, and it's just whether Ferrari can actually convert their pace into the weekend.
Yeah,
because the car's quick. Strategy, we won't say too much. So we knew though it was just going to be like the best of the rest. Who got what qualifying bring? Whether it was going to be wet or dry quali was the next thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, and as it turned out, it rained before qualifying, but then we didn't have rain for the whole of qualifying, but we had a damp track or wet track, and so I'm now going to our new thing. So now, for those of you watching, we have the qualifying one and qualifying two times. We're going to concentrate on qualifying one on Q1. So we went with a damp circuit into qualifying one, and at this time there wasn't any question of what tire to use. It was inters for everyone, basically. The only thing I'm going to say about our graphic here is that these times are not from the same session, so you see Q2 and Q1 times, but I only put the Q1 times for the bottom 5 because that's where we are going to concentrate ourselves. So we had 20th Nicolas Latifi. That's not at this point, that's not a huge surprise. Then Albon, for me, it's not that huge of a surprise, considering that this is a high downforce track, and the Williams for quite some years right now, it's not a very good car on high downforce tracks, so it wasn't that surprising for me.
No, and Albon coming off appendicitis and a bit of health issue, so he probably wasn't 100%.
No. And it's a very demanding circuit, so not really the circuit, but the ambient with the humidity and the temperature. It's very hard on the drivers, and they were all in the end of the race. They were all like a mess. It is amazing to see these guys that are like thoroughbred athletes right now, but they got absolutely knackered by the end of the race. So yeah, I didn't expect them to go to Q2 this time, and I was right. But yeah, he still was 6 tenths in front of Latifi. So, yeah. Let's be honest. Latifi is on his way out for sure right now. So I don't know if his motivation to the end of the year is going to be any good.
No, probably not.
Yeah. So the one car that I didn't expect to be here was Esteban Ocon, that got out in Q1. That was, at least for me, it was a surprise.
You'd expect him to be higher than that.
Yeah, even considering where Alonso came out, yeah, it was very surprising. Then Daniel Ricciardo, again, it's sad, but it's kind of the norm. Not surprising, kind of the norm right now. And then Valtteri Bottas. This weekend, Zoe was on fire, at least until this part of the weekend. He was he seemed much more comfortable with the car at this circuit than Bottas. Did you get that impression?
Yeah, he definitely seems to have it, and he's obviously just re-signed for next year, so he's probably got a nice little confidence. He can relax and bringing out some better driving, him not having to worry about it. So Yeah, on the whole, he had a fairly solid weekend. Not stellar.
Not stellar,
just...
but yeah. At least he came into the weekend a lot looser. You could notice that. I've been impressed all year with him, but yeah, you definitely saw a bit of a change with him. Exactly the opposite as Latifi. So yeah, that was our bottom 5 in Q1. Then we went into Q2. In Q2, Zoo didn't have that much of a... It was strange at this part. We even had the two Aston Martins try out the dry tires. So the track was drying up, but it was at least this will be a theme for the rest of the weekend. But we had 3 parts of the circuit that had new asphalt, and it wasn't getting dry enough on those parts. The water didn't evaporate or go out as we'd expect on a normal racetrack, on a normal tarmac. It was race tarmac. It was not street. Like, it's a little bit different. The mixture of the stones with the asphalt part is for racetracks is a little bit different. It's a little bit more abrasive. It has more grip, and it was that kind of tarmac, but somehow it didn't dry out as expected from a race asphalt. But yeah, this was the beginning of the them trying out dry tires, and the only 2 that tried were the 2 Astons, and it didn't really work out for them. It almost did, but it didn't really. Sebastian Vettel got in P14, then Mick Schumacher P13, then Lance Stroll P12, and then the surprise of the weekend, George Russell was not able to go into Q3. What happened with him this weekend?
I don't know. I don't know why he didn't get through. Whether he just didn't get the lap in, didn't push when he should. The problem with changing circuit, was he at maximum? Just the track wasn't there yet. So I don't know. I don't recall anything being said that he had any problems or issues or anything. It was just not fast enough.
Yeah, and as it turned out, after the race, he didn't even start the race on the track. He started from the pit lane because they changed his power unit.
So maybe there was something wrong with the power unit which wasn't giving him, which is why he didn't have the pace.
Yeah,
quite plausible.
And we had a few drivers from different teams complaining about the drivability of the engines. So there must have been something in the bumps or something like that was causing problems for some drivers, and more for some drivers than others. But yeah, it was one of those. It was a little bit strange to see George Russell go out in Q2. So that was our bottom 5 in Q2. Then we go to Q3. So in Q3, it was a little bit of a different approach, because some of the drivers started on slicks and some of them started on inters for their first run. And I think the only 2 drivers that started on inters were Tsunoda, and I don't think it was Gasly. I think Gasly even started later because he asked the team for slicks. I don't know if it was Kevin Magnussen or something like that. So yeah, it was a mixed kind of qualifying 3, but the talk of this part of qualifying was Red Bull and Mr. Max Verstappen, because they did a
Ferrari.
They did a Ferrari. Yeah, those were my words to you on Saturday. Red Bull doing a Ferrari. So yeah, what happened was that for his second, to get the picture straight for everyone, because the track was so cold and they had a little bit of water, and water even cools your tires even more. So it turned out that it was even more. You had even more of a benefit for doing one timed lap in the tires, but not really pushing, and then on the second one, or even in the third one, really pushing to get the lap time, because at that time it was when you had the most grip. So when it came out to the second attempt for Max, on his third lap, and it was going for pole. He was on a very good lap actually, and Red Bull just called him in before the lap even finished, and he was very angry because of that. And yeah, they didn't say nothing at that time, but my first thought was no fuel, and it turned out it was right. So they didn't put enough fuel on the car for them to. They have to be left with a liter of sample fuel for the FIA. So yeah, how big of a F up is that?
Yeah, it's not what you'd expect from a team. Again, human nature, human error, it happens, but yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. And to make things even worse, on his first push lap, that it was basically to warm up the tires a little bit more, they told him to abort and just not to overheat the tires for the last try, but he was on a lap good enough for pole.
Yeah.
So it was a double whammy.
It was a proper Ferrari effort.
Yes, it was a proper Ferrari. Yeah. So 10th, you got Yuki Tsunoda. 9th, Kevin Magnussen. Then P8, Max Verstappen. P7, Pierre Gasly. Both of the AlphaTauris on Q3. It was a good session for them. Then 6th, we had Lando Norris. Then 5th, Fernando Alonso. Then Carlos Sainz in 4th. But the thing that I have to tell everyone, like from P4 to P1, it was a 10th and a half basically. So it was almost nothing separating these four. But Carlos Sainz in P4, then Lewis Hamilton with a very good qualifying P3, then Sergio Perez P2, and then Mr. Charles Leclerc with pole. So yeah, our starting grid will be exactly this, but for Russell, that had a penalty and started from the pit lane. So these were our starting guys. So to the race, we had a massive flood basically, and the race started 1 hour after the time that it was supposed to. So and one thing that it was at least until this race, that it's a good stat that everyone that won the Singapore Grand Prix until yesterday was at the time or would become a world champion. That's a very good stat. So only world champions winning. Don't spoil it. So yeah, so we had 1 hour of delay. They were at least trying to get it's a street track. Let's not forget that it's a street track, and if there's a pile-up, consequences are a little bit worse than in a normal permanent circuit. So there's barriers there. So you don't really want to have any safety, and Eduardo Freitas was our race director for the weekend, and he really is one of those that safety first and the race after that. If there's no safety, he will not start the race, and he doesn't care what anyone says about him. So yeah, we had a 1 hour delay, exactly 1 hour. I'm interested in seeing as a driver your view on, because there's a lot of people that just say start, we have wet tires, why don't we use them, let's just start the race. Do you think that there's anything that you could say that, or it's just you have to release?
You can, if you look back to years gone by, early 2000s, in some of the races that were started. Example, like when Mark Webber threw up in his helmet, and the monsoon stuff, it's plausible to race in them, but obviously the cars are different now. Ground effects cars is that making a difference why the drivers don't want to? I don't know. I think a lot of it is TV and FIA, and they want the good show. And we all saw what happened at Spa in the wet, and they lost nearly the whole grid on. So I can see the safety implications, but then also it's not an oval, it's not NASCAR. Let's go race. Let's at least get out there and try. Because I don't know. It's very easy and flippant to say just get the tires on and go racing. You've got extreme wets, you can do it, but it's not necessarily.
No, we don't have extreme wets.
We don't have extremes.
No, we used to have those monsoon tires. Now we don't have them.
Well, the wets will still be equivalent. They'll still be good enough for that. I think the problem is more standing, especially at this particular track, will be standing water. And if you know you've got consistent wet, you can drive around it, but you can't hit puddles, because that's asking for an accident. So it's 6-1.
Yeah, I think the other problem is that they really don't want a repeat of Spa last year, because once you go on a formation lap, the race has started, and then you have a time till the end of that you have to do until the end of the race. And they didn't want for there to not be a race, but there still be points awarded like last year. So that might be, and we don't really know if there was something that the problems that we had last year with the whole Abu Dhabi thing is that we as fans don't really know what's going on those meetings between Race Direction and the FIA and the teams, and they might have a deal between everyone that they prefer to delay the race and then to have that happen again. So yeah, that might come a little bit.
There's going to be politics involved somewhere, guaranteed.
Yeah, there's always politics in F1. F1 without politics is not F1 forever. It has been like that for decades, so it's not now that it's going to be different. So yeah, we had the start of the race. Everyone was on. We had a standing start, which, in my opinion, is better than starting behind the safety car. So they got that right, and everyone was on inters. No one. It was. You could see that no, it wasn't.
Although they did say on the broadcast I watched that apparently Hamilton was the last one to put tyres on, and originally they had full wets, and it literally got to the point of last second, it's like, we've got to put tyres on now, and they went into, so there was, I think he was thinking it should be full wets, and they sort of got forced into inters as in everyone else did it, so they couldn't be the only one on wets.
Yeah, and knowing what we know about the race, that will probably be a bad decision. So they got it right there. So we got to start, and Perez had a mega start. Who had a good start as well. Carlos Sainz had a good start. Lando had a good start, and then we had Max Verstappen that had a good start in the other way. He didn't move.
He went backwards.
Almost backwards, because he hit anti-stall and the car didn't start. So in turn one, we already had some. We didn't have any carnage, because at turn one, there's a left-right, like almost a fast chicane, and then the left-hander, the real left-hander, and both Max was squeezed on the inside, so he cut the chicane, and Lewis was forced off track, let's say, by Carlos Sainz. Yeah,
helped him off.
Didn't give him any room, basically, so he had to go off track. So yeah, those were the two incidents on that part of the start, but no penalties, nothing given. Max didn't gain anything. We've seen from 4 years right now that the stewards tend to be a little bit easier on the penalties on the race starts, so we didn't really expect anything to come out of it, did we? With no damage.
No, and there wasn't, like you say, no one gained anything. It was more accident prevention, so I think it was just let them carry on. And
yeah, so then Max was back to P11. He started P8 and went down to P11. And then he was battling with Magnussen. I don't know if you saw, but Magnussen almost put Max into the wall. They actually touched.
He was firm with him.
Firm. He broke his front wing on the process of being firm with him, and then almost it was like centimeters of the wall that Max was. But yeah, he stood his ground and was able to. No, he didn't pass Magnussen then he continued on behind Magnussen. So in the end of that lap, we had Perez first, Leclerc second, Sainz third, fourth was Hamilton, Norris, then Alonso, Gasly, Vettel, Tsunoda, Stroll, and Verstappen P11. So we did get in front of Magnussen until the end of that lap. My notes are always right. Unless when they are wrong. So, yeah, I think the other... Because then we go to lap 3, and Hamilton got on the radio. I think not only the wet part, the wet tires versus inters, but I think he wanted scrubbed inters when they got it, and he got new inters. So the idea is that with and we used to have a lot of that, people scrubbing the tires, so doing in practice 1 or 2 laps with the tires, and then use those on the pit stops in the race. We haven't had that for a long time, but it used to be common practice. So he wanted the scrubbed tires, because he talked about, his words was complaining about tires, and he didn't say he wanted scrubs, but everyone thought that he really wanted scrub tires. So what would help him scrub tires on inters, at least in this part of the race?
Other than psychologically feeling, but they will have sort of the sheen that they come out the molds with. You will have that first few laps of maybe not as much grip, especially if conditions aren't exactly optimum, but having done a formation lap and a couple of few laps, it shouldn't be an issue. I say, unless it's just psychologically he feels he could go faster on scrubs, which is why I asked for scrubs, and it's that sort of frustration.
Yeah, and we actually see that with Lewis, all of his career. Yeah, he really likes to get that frustration when something is not going right. He likes to get frustration out by seeing something completely out of place. And I actually think Mercedes are able to get the best of him, just because they know what's going on and they get on the chin and know that he's not really serious about some of the stuff. But yeah, he actually asked for them. And at this time, Max is going up again because he went from P8 to P11, and at this part of the race he is already back up to P9, so he was able to go through the field, at least in this part of the race. So he was able to get the feeling from the car to go to the front. And at this time I noticed, and it was going to be a standard thing for the rest of the race, we had Perez P1, then 1 second after him Leclerc, and then from Leclerc to Sainz we had 6 seconds. This in lap 4. So yeah, Sainz was really off the pace of Charles, even more than in other races. This race, I think. I don't really know what's happening there, but yeah.
No, yeah, just obviously something wasn't feeling right, was it, to start with?
Do you think that the rain amplified the problems that he's been having all season?
Oh, definitely. I think there's also the aspect of, like we said before, street circuit walls, you can't afford to get it wrong, so it just heightens the pressure. Throw the rain in there as well, damp, wet track, just yeah, it's the better drivers show in these sort of conditions, don't they?
Yeah,
able to push and maintain.
Yeah,
and let's be honest, Charles has gone into this weekend going, I've got to win. There's that extra motivation of every time I don't win, I'm kissing goodbye to the championship. Simple as. Whereas Sainz is more of a, if everything falls into place, I might have a shot at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about that, but yeah, he was really off the pace. Most of the race, we even had a bigger gap from Leclerc to Sainz that we had from Norris to Hamilton. So it really showed that, yeah, he was really off the pace this weekend. Not in qualifying, but at least in race conditions, yeah, he didn't seem to have the feeling for the car, and it was basically no race for him. He had Hamilton behind him, but Hamilton didn't seem to have the confidence as well. I think it's fair to say. He started complaining in lap 3, so that shows it. Yeah, he didn't really have the confidence to. So yeah, we were in a situation where no one has any. None of these drivers have any confidence. So then Norris says not trying up really quick, and this was mainly on. We actually didn't see a dry line for the entirety of the race. So it was one of those. It was really hard to calculate when we were going to softs or no. Not softs, but dries. Yeah. So yeah, and Magnussen actually got a mid-pack flag for the front wing. He complained after the race for that flag because apparently the front wing on that part, because the end plates now, unlike other years, it's like a curve thing. It's only one structure, and it's a curve thing from this side to the main part of the front wing. And apparently there is a metal rod from there. So he said, there's like a metal thing going on there. Even if that came off, it wasn't going to come off the wing. But I don't know. I always get a little bit stressed about seeing parts of the car.
It should have been a meatball flag, 100%, and he seems to have gotten quite a few of them this year. So he obviously is just taking umbrage with it. But if he stopped breaking his front wing, look at it from that point of view. Stop hitting things, and you won't have the issues.
Yeah. And then suddenly we had, on that exact same lap, we had a yellow flag, and then we saw Latifi with a flat tire, rear left, and we were like he was going into some kind of wall. But then we saw Guan Yu Zhou basically stopped at a corner, and we saw the incident that was between both of them. What's your view on this incident between Guan Yu Zhou and Latifi?
Well, Latifi didn't give him any room. He basically just drove him straight into the wall. It doesn't get any more. And he even said after, he goes, "I didn't see him." It sums up Latifi just perfectly. There's no way he could have stayed doing stuff like that.
Yeah, he missed the apex on the previous corner. He was way into the outside. He was being pressured by Zhou there. So I don't know why he didn't look in the mirror to see if Zhou had a good exit of the corner and was right beside him.
Yeah, exactly. You know you've run wide. There's someone right behind you. You're going to assume that they're going to be on your left or right, whichever the corner is. And he just pulled back onto the racing line to take my line. It was. I think that's about all we can say about that. I mean, I felt sorry for Zhou because he was not at fault at all, and obviously broke the steering arm on the front right. So that was it. Game over.
Yeah, game over. Even before the game really started, he had a bad start as well, so he went. That's why he was behind Latifi. But yeah, he was on his way forward because he had more pace than those cars. So yeah, I have it here. Latifi's fault. I think it's a no-brainer. He's going to get a 5-place penalty for next race. As I saw in Twitter, someone saying, "Yeah, does that mean he's going to start 25th?" It's starting to be a little bit of a joke, yeah. But I have sympathy for him, but at this time, yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame.
If you're not performing at this level, it doesn't matter how nice a fella you are or how much people like you, you're going to get trashed because this is supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport.
Yeah, and
you've got a walk-in meme.
Yeah, and talking about shady driving, Russell and Bottas touched, and yeah, Russell seemed to be a little bit tough in the race as well, because he locked up and while trying to pass Bottas, and yeah, it was a little bit messy as well. Not the situation that was with Latifi, but yeah. It was a little bit strange as well. So Magnussen pitted to change his front wing, and his luck is only got better because safety car right after he pitted. So he lost the time and lost places, lost everything. So they brought out the safety car because of Guan Yu Zhou's car. Latifi was out because he actually had the suspension was broken on the rear left where he hit Zhou, but it was a very quick. It was just one lap safety car, and in the end of the 2 laps, in the end of lap 10, the safety car came in, and Max went on to just continue passing people. So no changes from the front of the grid, but Max was up to P7 right now. It was lap 11, and he gained 2 places at one time on when the safety car came in. And it was at this time that I saw the Leclerc to Sainz was 10 seconds and Hamilton to Norris was 7 seconds. This on lap 19. So 8 laps after the safety car in. And Max, again, I don't know if you noticed that, but Max complained again. This is the second or third time this season that he complained about lag on the upshifts. So he must click on the pedal and it doesn't shift right away. These gearboxes are amazing. They shift very fast, but yeah, they seem to have a little bit of gearbox problems this year. They had to crack open the gearbox on Max's car in Zandvoort, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah,
something's going on, whether it's hydraulics, whether it's software, whether it's actually mechanical, the hardware.
Yeah.
So many things, like you say, with them, but obviously at this level, you're a perfectionist and you want everything to be just how you want it. And 5 milliseconds is a lot of time. And someone of his caliber will actually notice that.
Yeah, and it must be. I cannot really say because I never driven a race car, but the delay part, I have a little bit of experience in the music world, and it's odd when you get a little bit of lag, and when you're so concentrated and you get a bit of lag. It can throw you off your concentration part. It can throw you off a bit. So that's maybe what's happening. Not really a massive fault, but
what is a millisecond actually feels like 3 seconds when it's happening. When you're like, as you say, when you're in the zone and everything's just right, it just feels wrong, but it will feel so exaggeratedly wrong.
Yeah, that's. So at this time, we had a train of cars. We had Norris, Alonso, and then Max. And Max wasn't really able to pass Alonso. At this time, he started, at least in my eyes, he started to have a little bit of problems getting out of the corners, maybe because he stressed the rear tires too much on the beginning of the race to get all those overtakes, but it didn't seem to have the grip to get out of corners and really challenge Alonso for the position. But yeah, it didn't have to because Alonso's car just decided it had enough. Did you see Alonso after the car broke down? His image on the barriers. This was lap 22, and Alonso looked like he was over. Like, so drained. It was crazy. Even I don't know if it's just my mind playing tricks on me, but it even seemed to be trembling a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if it's nerves or what it is, but it seemed to be a bit odd. Or anger. Yeah, anger. So we had a virtual safety car, lap 22. And Russell pits for mediums. And right after he got out, there was a thought that he maybe crossed the white line. And maybe he did. But yeah, he had no grip on those dry tires.
Yeah, he was full drifting.
Yeah, don't you think that it would... If you're going to make the gamble, wouldn't it be better to go on the softs? I know there's still a lot of laps until the end of the race, but in those changing conditions, don't you want to...
Yeah, you would think softs would be the way to go. There's obviously a reason why you and I aren't running Formula One teams, because they know more than us, apparently. But yeah, you would have thought in those conditions, and being the first person, go with softs and give yourself the best opportunity, because I think it was less than a lap and he was on the radio saying there's just no grip. It's crazy.
So yeah, yeah, but It was to be for a few laps that he was massively off the pace. He was like 3, 4, 5 seconds off the pace on most laps. So he was basically a guinea pig to Hamilton at this point. So yeah, lap 23 we have green flag, and then lap 26 Albon crashes. Our boy, Mr. Super Williams driver Albon crashed. He was able to get out of the barrier, but his wing stayed there, and so we had a VSC again. So 3 laps of racing and then VSC again, and then only 1 lap after that VSC ending. And it was at this time that when it appeared green flag on the track on the screen, and they cut to the corner where the crash had happened, and there were 2 marshals getting the front wing out of the barriers. I don't really know if those were delayed images, and when the next cars to get to that corner was Verstappen, if I'm not mistaken. Verstappen and Norris, they were battling, and the marshals weren't on the corner by that time. But yeah, I don't really know what happened. If it was a wrong message from the marshals because there's posts, and those marshals talk to the race director and say it's fine, go green. If there was a wrong message, if what it happened, but yeah, it was a little bit strange to have marshals.
Yeah, a bit tight.
Yeah, a bit tight. And then we seem to have there's a pattern here. 2 laps later, Ocon, the gearbox failed spectacularly. On the first image, on more images, it just seemed to shut off. But when they got us a image from the front, it just exploded everywhere.
Yeah, that let go properly.
Properly, it was white smoke everywhere. So VSC again. He did a little bit of a signs, that meaning when he was getting out of the car starts rolling backwards. But the marshals were able to get there on time, and yeah, they didn't seem to know where to put the car. I thought they were a little bit confused on what they should do, but they were able to get the car out fast. He went out just beside a gate, so it was easy for them. So 1 lap again, and VSC ending. So by now we had 30 to 32 laps. VSC ended in the end of lap 30, and every time that we have a safety car or VSC, the tires get a little bit cooler, and we have a new wave of flying laps. And at this time, it really came down from the 2 minutes mark, and it went to 156.2. And at this time, we had on the Portuguese feed, we have Antonio Felix Acosta. He was a test driver he was on the Red Bull program. For those of you that don't know, he's a Formula E champion, about to become LMP2 champion on the WEC. We had him in the commentary box, and he really said, now it's really time for slicks, 2 or 3 laps, and we're going to have slicks. He says that, and Hamilton has, I don't know what, a brain fart or what it was, but it was really strange. He just understeered into the wall.
Yeah, he went a bit too hard, a bit too late on the brakes, and once it had locked, that was it. Game over. No steering. But he got out of it quite well. He was very lucky.
Lucky, and it was skill as well, because you see him trying to turn and then just opening up the steering to hit the barrier head on.
Square on.
He was able to get out. The worst part from from my view, there was that when he came out just between Norris and Verstappen. It was a strange move. Yeah, it could have been a little bit worse if it wasn't as good as driver as those two that he came in between. But yeah, he just shoved Max a little bit, it seemed to me. But yeah, it was okay, but a bit forceful. Let's say.
He was obviously adrenaline super high at that point. He's just crashed and he can just see a car coming and and he can see it's Max, so he's definitely going to not let him by.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And this triggered on that lap. Gasly comes for mediums. Russell started to go way faster and started to get some purple sectors. It seemed to be where it was most wet was in the third sector, because he started pulling up purple sectors on sector 1 and sector 2, and then lose the remaining time and doing about the same lap as Leclerc's fastest lap on the third sector. But it seemed to be time to change tires, to go to the dries. It was really the track was going dry enough for dry tires. And Gasly stopped, Leclerc stopped. He had a horrible stop. He was so slow that
he missed his marks, didn't he?
He missed his marks, yeah.
And that's it. Yeah, and that shows how much it makes a difference.
Yeah, centimeters might make a little difference, because they have it rehearsed so that the gunman just goes straight on. So if you have to go a little bit to the side, it throws you off a little bit the rhythm. So,
yeah, he must have been a foot or so.
Yeah, but it was more than a few centimeters. Yeah. Hamilton pits, but Hamilton had damage on the front wing, so it made sense. Bottas pitted for softs, the other ones for mediums. So Bottas was one of the only ones to pit for softs. Then next lap, Perez, Sainz, and Verstappen pitted for mediums, and Tsunoda as well. And I'm talking about Tsunoda because he had a bit of a crash, let's say. He was on mediums as well, and it was almost the same as Lewis, but the car gripped a little bit more before the corner. So when he went into the barrier, he didn't have any chance. He was on the side.
He was in there.
Yeah, and good thing that he took his hands out of the wheel before the crash, because it was right at the last millisecond that he took his hands off, and the steering just went like 360 degrees in a fraction of a second. So I think they will at least be very sore if he left his hands on the steering wheel, like Hamilton seems to do every time. But yeah, it took his hands out, and that brought out the safety car. And the two drivers that hadn't stopped for dry tires because they were trying to get a little bit more into the race were the two McLarens that came out at almost at the same time. Ricciardo was way behind Norris at that time, but they both pitted in the safety car. They gained time, but they could have gained a little bit more time, because the way that the safety car came out, they were already in the start of the lap. So they came out, the safety car came out just behind them. So they had to do a whole lap and then come into the pits. So they gained, but they could have gained a little bit more at this time. And Norris came in for mediums and Ricciardo for softs. And this meant that our new running order was Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, Norris, Verstappen, Ricciardo, Stroll, Vettel, Hamilton, Gasly, Mick Schumacher, Bottas, Magnussen, and Russell. I'm saying every one of them because we had only 14 cars in the race by now. So 6 retirements already. Verstappen complained about a tear-off on his right rear. And at this time, the graphic changed. So we didn't have laps, we had time to go because time was running out on the. They have 2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours to finish the Grand Prix. So at this time, they made the calculations, and they weren't going to do all the laps before the time ended. So from now on, I'm going to talk only in time. So when safety car came in, when the safety car time was ending, we had about 35 minutes to go in the race. And then when safety car comes in, they restart the race, and Max has a huge moment that could have been like race ending for 2 drivers. So he went to pass Norris. He went to the inside of we have turned around into like that first complex, and then we have like a small straight, a right-hander, and then we have basically a huge straight with a corner in the middle, but a flat-out corner. And Verstappen goes on the inside, and I thought it was the tear-off that he had on the rear brakes, and maybe brakes being a little bit too hot. But it turned out that he bottomed out really bad, and that made the car jump, and he locked up all 4 tires until the oblivion, basically.
Yeah, you don't see lockups like that very often these days, do you?
No. And full props for Norris not to turn in. Just crash him.
Well, yeah, I don't think you could have seen him, the amount of smoke that he put up.
Yeah, so that put up Verstappen went off. He came back. He didn't lose that much time, to be honest, because he came out right behind who it was. He came out like in P11, so the P8. So he went from P6 to P8. No, P5 to P8. So only 3 places. But his tires were ruined. So he had to pit. And they put softs on that part. So yeah, he had to pit, and he came out in P12 with 30 minutes to go on the race. So yeah, Max didn't have a very good weekend. Let's say weekend, because qualifying was not good as well. Russell and Mick Schumacher touched. Russell continued his horrible weekend as well, and had to pit because he had a flat tire. Mick Schumacher had a flat tire as well, so he had to pit as well. Both of them going into the softs. Race was declared dry, and the DRS was enabled at 20 minutes until the end of the race, and then the rest of the race was basically Verstappen, because in the front of the race nothing happened, basically. Perez started to pull away from Charles was pulling away from Sainz pulled away from Norris pulled away from Ricciardo. So basically, and Ricciardo pulled away from I think it was Stroll. Yeah, it was Stroll. So yeah, everyone pulled away from everyone, and the only cars we had closer were at this point were Stroll, Vettel, and Hamilton. Hamilton was catching Vettel, and Verstappen started to reel in everyone, basically. Bottas, then everyone. So 26 minutes to go, he made his fastest lap. Then 20 minutes to go, he was P11, so P12 to P11. Then he had 8 seconds until Bottas in P10. 6 minutes later, he passed him. At this time, we get a message that maybe Perez had infringed safety car rules on both safety cars. So the team told him, yeah, you might get a 5-second time penalty, so get on it. Verstappen then goes to P9, and then he came up to Lewis, and Lewis again pushed a little bit too much, got understeer, almost took out Vettel, and if he had crashed on that part, he would have taken out Verstappen as well. So, but he was able to get the car turned in, and Verstappen passed him to P8. So, second error of the weekend for Hamilton. And yeah, Perez got away from the 5 seconds. He finished like 7 or 8 seconds ahead of.
Yeah, I think 7
seconds ahead. And on the final lap, which was lap 59, Verstappen passed Vettel for P7. So we can say that the only part of this race that really went to plan for Max was this last part, that he went from P12 to P7 in like
20 minutes.
20 minutes or something like that. So yeah, so our race results are, sorry for that, Sergio Perez finished the race first place, then Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz doing up our podium, then Lando Norris and Ricciardo, a very good weekend for McLaren. They had 2 drivers on the points, while Alpine DNF'd. 2 DNFs, basically. Then Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, Max Verstappen on the Red Bull, Sebastian Vettel on the Aston Martin, Lewis Hamilton on the Mercedes, and Pierre Gasly on the AlphaTauri. This was our top 10. So now I have one question for you. This is the first time. Who was your driver of the day?
Oh, we're doing that, are we? Okay. I think you have to give it to Perez, because he took the start, took the lead at the start, and he didn't really make any mistakes. He had a few issues, like you said, complaining of drivability, and a few during the middle of the race where he lost a bit of pace, but seemed to find a way around that, and he pulled the gap he needed to serve the penalty. So yeah, I think he was good. I don't think Max did enough to warrant driver of the day, because he made a couple of mistakes, and the rest of them sort of just went about and did their business. Ricciardo was only as high as he was because other cars DNF'd. Yeah, I think Sergio deserves it this weekend.
Yeah, for me as well. It took out that stat that had that only champions won this Grand Prix, but it was really a champions drive, to be honest. He almost didn't put a foot off the entire weekend. It is common knowledge that the car now suits a little bit more Max Verstappen. It might be because of weight distribution, because they talked about that. Sergio has a new floor that's not as fast as the old one, but suits his driving style a little bit better. They have talked about that. So yeah, it seems that his one lap pace is not that good, but race-wise, he was mega this weekend. I didn't really talk about him because he was just faultless, basically. Just controlled the race.
Yeah, he's done what we're used to seeing Max and Hamilton do, where they're so far up the road that you don't talk about them in the race because they're not doing anything. They're just turning the laps out and getting it done.
Yeah, and the name of the episode is Post-Race Winner, because he was under investigation for the safety car periods. And he was so comfortable that they told him, you have to be 5 seconds ahead, and he just went on and gone.
So while we're then talking about the safety car, and what are your thoughts on will be investigated after the race?
Yeah.
I don't know what the FIA is trying to do to themselves here, because surely we all want to see the winner of the race on the Sunday and not Sunday night or Monday morning for a penalty. And I don't see why they couldn't review it. It was a simple thing of he had larger than a 10-meter gap. There's enough
10 car lengths.
10 car lengths. So they'll have a way to measure it. They'll be able to do it through GPS data and everything. Why do you have to talk to the team?
Yeah, it seems to be a
and the fact that he's done
simple.
It twice. So you go, no, 5-second penalty at your pit stop or add it to your time. At least we all know what's happening then.
Yeah.
It's getting a bit annoying.
Yeah, and they didn't have... They had nothing to review from 30 minutes of the race until the end of the race. So, and we already had the message that he was being investigated on that time. So they had all of the time in the world. So 30 minutes to such a simple penalty. Either you are 10 car lengths behind or not.
The fact that they have it in the rules will mean that they will have some form of software at their disposal to check it by clicking a button, and the GPS will bring it up. There will be technology there. So yeah. I don't see what waiting after the race has to do, because if you ask the team, they're gonna, how do I put this delicate? They're gonna say what they need to say to justify what they've done, whether that be Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari. They will back their driver and come up with a reason why he was more than 10 car lengths.
Yeah,
but it's not a justifiable thing. It is, if the car breaks down and stops and he pulls off the track, different story. But yeah, I don't understand it personally.
Yeah, I don't understand it as well. But that's what we had. They had all the time in the world to review it. They didn't because I don't know why, to be honest. It seems that they got used to when you get, let's say, 10% until like 90% of the race, they will not review basically anything until the end of the race, and it's, I don't know, do these stewards need a time off before the end of the race? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, what's the next way? Are we going to start going sim racing style of no live stewarding, and you've got to submit your incident reports at the end and wait 2 days to get the result?
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I think it's the best words. But yeah, and the drivers in the end of the race, like Charles knew that Sergio was the best driver, the fastest driver of the day. They were all relaxed and talking to each other, so it doesn't seem to be something that should have happened. And yeah, I hope that they fix this at some point. I'm not saying for the next race, but at some point.
Add it to the list.
Add it to the list.
Add to the list.
With the licenses and all of that stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. They really need to get that sorted. They really need to get that sorted. We don't want post-race winners. We want the guy that finishes at least know what we stand on.
The guy standing on the podium is the guy that's won. That's the nice one. That's what we want.
Yeah, we don't really need as well as that. What was it? I can't really explain it, but in the beginning of the 2000s, we had some situations where there was a red flag and drivers started then all bunched up, but then it was the race time difference that counted, so they needed to
aggregates and everything.
aggregates. Yeah.
No,
It's a messy way of going about racing.
you just want a nice, simple way of clarifying. You've won, you're second, you're third, and so on down. You don't need to. I understand some penalties will be given post race, be that technical and scrutineering, such that. But something as simple as this. It's if you or I are able to go, he's more than 10 car lengths back, sat at home watching it on our TV, and they have a lot more information and data at hand. I don't see why it takes half an hour.
Yeah, I don't either.
Anyway,
let's stop the ranting. So next week we go to everyone's favorite circuit, which is Suzuka. And we're going to see that there's Max finished behind Charles and Sergio, but he still has a opportunity to clinch the championship next weekend. Do you think that the Red Bull car is going to dominate there or not? Do you see the Ferrari coming?
I think it'll be much as we've seen so far the season. It's going to be Red Bull and Ferrari are going to be the two cars to beat, so to speak, and it will just be which one of them hit the ground running better. I think Max, notoriously Max has gone well there. So I think we don't know, like we said, with practice these days, we don't really know until we get to qualifying, but there'll be, as long as there's no engine penalties or silly things like that put one of them at the back of the grid from the start of the race, I think you should expect to see the four of them up the front, probably with the Mercedes in there as well.
Yeah. I don't know how bumpy the track will be with these cars, but I don't know, because it seems that Mercedes struggles with that. So and being an old style racetrack, maybe it is a little bit bumpier. I don't know, but we'll have to see basically on the weekend, because it's an unknown right now. We haven't raced there for a. Did we go there last year? No, we didn't go.
No, we didn't.
So 2019 again. So it's a track.
Another first,
like in 2 years again. So yeah, we'll have to see. We're going to stay in that part of the world. The race will be very early. It will be, if I'm not mistaken, 6 o'clock here in Portugal and UK, and so British Standard Time. So it will be a bit of a morning race, and we'll be here. I'm going to be here. You're not, because we're going on holiday, and a very deserved holiday, and we'll have another guest of the show, and he was going to be here this week to talk about other stuff, but since we got a race review, we did a normal podcast. But he's going to be my company next week, next year, and next week, next year as well. Yeah. I'm going to sack. If he's better than you, I'm going to sack you. Let's be honest. No, I'm joking. So he's going to be here with us next week. Do you want to give a little bit of? You know him better than me. I know him a little bit. I know he's my boss in DGM, but normally I talk more with you. His name is Jay, and you could talk a little bit about him. You can talk shit about him if you want.
I wouldn't do that. No, I've known Jay for a number of years, and he's been racing as well through the UK scene, like club scene, and doing a lot of endurance events. So, and then been out to, I think, Barcelona for a 24-hour in Dubai. So he's been about more in the like national stroke international scene. So yeah, he's good. Done a bit of driving himself as well, but I'll let him brag about what he's done. But yeah, again, he's a good lad and loves his motorsport as well, just like us. So
yeah, so
be a good stand-in.
Next week is going to do the race review with me, and in the future we're going to do a entire episode about him and about his adventures in motorsports. You talked about some of them, and like the 24-hour championship. I think it's Creventic 24-hour championship right now, the name of it. Portuguese MotoGP rider Miguel Oliveira did a race this year. Was it this year or last year? I don't remember. It was Barcelona with KTM, the Barcelona 24 hours. So it's a very interesting championship because it has many classes and many different cars. So he will talk about that. But next week he will be here to talk all about F1 and the Japanese Grand Prix. So yeah, that was a very interesting weekend. Much better. Singapore seems to bring out interesting races, and this was no exception. So yeah, it was a good weekend, and we'll go on to Suzuka, as I said, everyone's favorite racetrack apart from Spa. and yeah, we'll be here talking about that. But now until the next weekend, I would like to thank my colleague, Mr. Earl Goddard. You can find him at Twitter at Earl Goddard. You can find me at Pedro Barbosa SR. I'm almost said in Portuguese there. It's not my native language. And you can find the podcast at Bomb Draft Prey in any social media platform. And our email is bdappodcast@gmail.com. We'll be back next week. I will be, not Earl, with Mr. J, and we'll talk about the Japanese Grand Prix. So thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe and all of that jazz in every social media platform and all of the podcasting apps, or the one you prefer. And see you next week.
See you later.
Bump, Draft and Pray is an independent podcast, and the music was by Letting Punks Know.